A hiring manager, let's call a Tendai, opens a laptop on a Monday morning. She has 140 applications to go through for a finance officer, let's say. The calendar is 3 other calls that she has to make. She exactly has 90 minutes to get through the pile before the afternoon. She opens the first CV, 6 pages. She scrolls through. She closes it. She opens the second, generic personal statement. Responsibilities are listed on that one like a job description. She moves on. By the time she gets to number 12, she has developed a system. Page 1, 14 seconds, yes pile, no pile. Of the 140 applications she has received, 131 people did not make it past page 1. Most of them weren't unqualified. Many of them had the right experience. Several of them would have genuinely been good in that role, but their CVs didn't work. And in a hiring process, a CV that doesn't work is the same as a CV that does not exist. Welcome to People and Platforms. I'm Carlo-Marcel Dube, People and Culture Manager, a researcher, and someone who sits on both sides of this conversation. I've reviewed hundreds of applications. I've even coached people who couldn't understand why they kept being passed over. And what I've seen consistently on both sides is a fundamental misunderstanding about what a job application actually is. Today, we're getting into the application stack, yeah? The CV, the cover letter, the references, the things candidates get wrong, not because they're not talented, but because nobody ever told them that applying for a job is not a documentation exercise, it's a marketing problem. And most people are marketing themselves terribly. Here's the idea I want you to hold on to for this entire episode. Your CV is not your biography. It is not a record of everywhere you've been and everything you've done. It is a sales document with one job to get you to the next stage. That's the one job. Not to impress your mother, not to document your full career history, not to prove you work hard. Its only function is to make a hiring manager want to talk to you. When you understand that, every decision you make about your CV becomes clearer. The length, the structure, what to lead with, it all flows from that single purpose. So let's go through the specific ways candidates undermine that purpose and what to do instead. The first problem is the universal CV. The CV you send everywhere, to every role without changing a word. I understand why people do this. Tailoring can take time, right? And when you're applying for 15 jobs, let's say, spending 2 hours on each one feels outrightly impossible. But here's the reality. A CV sent to every job is not optimized for any job. Hiring managers and recruiters can tell immediately when a CV hasn't been tailored. It reads like a generic statement of existence rather than a response to a specific opportunity. It doesn't speak to context. It doesn't reflect language. It doesn't answer the question they've been asking, which is, why are you the right person for this role? Now, I'm not saying rewrite your entire CV for every application. It's not realistic and it's honestly not necessary. What I'm saying is rotate the lens, your opening statement, your lead achievements, the sequence of what you emphasize. These should shift depending on what the role needs, right? An HR analytics role gets a different version of me than an HRBP role. Even if it's the same career, the same person, the same experience. The experience is fixed. The packaging is variable. Most candidates never learn to work the packaging. Page count is not a proxy for credibility. A 6-page CV does not signal strength or experience. It signals an inability to prioritize on your part, which is ironically one of the core competencies most senior roles require. The rule is simple. 2 pages for most roles, 3 pages if you are a very senior leader with 20 years plus experience. Think about what a long CV communicates from the reader's perspective. It says, I haven't thought about what's relevant to you, and I just given you everything. Then you find the good piece in there. You need to edit ruthlessly, to be honest. If a role you held 15 years ago isn't directly relevant to what you're applying for today, it gets 2 lines. If an achievement isn't demonstrably impressive, you diminish a bit, you know? Now, let's talk about AI, because this is where the application landscape has shifted. dramatically in the last 2 years. AI tools have made it easy, almost frictionless, to generate cover letters, personal statements, competency statements, or responses. You paste in the job description, describe your background. Out comes a polished sounding document. Hiring managers are now reading hundreds of these, and they have a texture that's recognizable. The same transitional phrases, the same sentence structures, the same way of opening a paragraph with "I am passionate and results-driven professional." The same absence of anything that sounds like a real human being who actually wants a specific job. AI-generated applications don't fail because they're AI. They fail because they're generic. You see, here's the distinction I want you to make. There's a difference between using AI to generate your application and using AI to think through your application. Using AI to brainstorm, to identify which experiences are relevant, to stress test your framing, to suggest structure, and then rewriting in your own voice with your own specificity, your own examples. That's a tool being used well. Pasting the output and submitting, that's a shortcut that costs you one thing that a cover letter is supposed to do: demonstrate that you are a specific person who specifically wants a specific role. That is one of the most common CV mistakes that I see. And it's subtle enough that most people do it and do not recognize that they're doing it. Responsible for managing the HR function, oversaw procurement processes across the organization, supported program delivery in food locations. These are responsibilities. They describe a job. The hiring manager already has a job description. They wrote it, right? What you're trying to figure out is what happened under your watch. That's a fundamental difference between responsibilities and achievements. Responsibilities will tell me what you were supposed to do. Achievements tell me what you actually did. How many staff did you manage? What improved? What did you build that didn't exist before? Let's say, what problem did you solve that was genuinely difficult? But how much did things actually change? If you can add a number to it, add the number. Numbers are specificity, and specificity is credibility. Managed HR function becomes, say, led a 12-person HR team through a project implementation across 3 offices, reducing payroll processing time by 40%. That's a different CV. Your referees are not a formality, they're a signal. Who you list as a reference tells the hiring manager something about the professional relationships you have built, your judgment about what's relevant, and frankly, your network. I've seen CVs from candidates with real experience who list a former teacher, a community leader they volunteered with in 2009, a religious figure, a family friend who holds a professional title. None of these people can speak to your professional performance in a relevant context, and that's the only thing a reference needs to do. Your reference should be able to tell about people that you've worked with in a professional capacity, recently enough that they remember you clearly, and in a context relevant to the role that you're applying for. Say a former manager, right? A direct manager. A client or stakeholder who experienced your work firsthand. If you genuinely cannot find 2 people who fit that description, that's worth sitting with. It may mean you need to invest, right? And building professional relationships, not just a professional experience. And always, contact your referees before you submit the application. Tell them what you have applied for. Tell them that you'd like them to emphasize. Give them the context to speak specifically about your application. A reference who is called without warning gives a generic reference, right? A reference who is briefed gives a recommendation. That is the skill that separates candidates who get multiple offers from candidates who get multiple rejections, even when the underlying experience is compatible or comparable. Your experience is fixed. That happened. What happened. But which parts of it are most feasible, emphasized, is basically about how you present yourself. Think of it like a camera angle. The angle doesn't change, but where you position the camera changes everything about what the viewer sees. A candidate applying for an HR analytics role should lead with data, with systems and evidence about working with numbers. The same candidate applying for an HRBP role should lead with stakeholder relationships, advisory impact, and how they influenced decisions, right? Same career, different lens, different CV, or at least a different first page, right? Most candidates have one camera position and they shoot every application from it. For this one, I will keep it short because the point is simple. In most professional contexts, corporate organizations, NGOs, private sector, international development agencies, your photo does not belong on your CV. It's not about whether you present well. It's about what the photo introduces into the evaluation process. Yeah? A hiring manager looking at a photo before reading a word of your experiences, forming impressions that have nothing to do with your competence. That's a disadvantage to you, even when it's entirely unconscious on their part. Beyond this bias risk, a photo on a CV in context where it's not standard signals unfamiliarity with professional norms in that hiring environment. You need to know your industry. You know your market. In most contexts, you are likely to be applying for leave the photo out. Your email address is the first thing your hiring manager reads on your CV. Before your name lands, before your title, before a single word of experience, there it is at the top of the page. And then they see thickbarbie@gmail.com. Wow. I'm not making this up. These things, they arrive in hiring inboxes. Your email address communicates something about you before you've communicated anything about yourself. It sets a tone. And if the tone it sets is, I haven't thought about how I present professionally, you have started on a deficit before the page has even been read. This is not hard to fix. It takes 4 minutes, right? First name, last name at Gmail. That's it. Keep it clean. Keep it forgettable in the right way. The email address that hiring managers forget is the email address that's working correctly. The hobbies section. Let's be honest about what usually goes here. Reading, traveling, socializing, listening to music. Please tell the hiring manager nothing because they describe almost every human being alive. They take up space that could either be used for something meaningful or more likely simply not be there. The hobbies section exists because CV templates have a hobbies section. That's the only reason people include it, to be honest. But here is the nuance I want to offer. Hobbies done well can actually earn their place. If your hobby is genuinely distinctive, competitive chess, distance running, a creative discipline at a serious level, it humanizes your CV and gives a conversation starter. If you volunteer with an organization, let's say, that's relevant to your field, that belongs on your CV as experience, not as a hobby. If you are doing something that signals intellectual curiosity, leadership, or commitment, it might add something. The question to ask is not, do I have hobbies? The question is, does this information make a hiring manager more likely to want to meet me? If the answer is no, cut it. Use the space for something that ends it. Imagine your CV is a website. Page 1 is the landing page. A good landing page has one job: make the visitor want to go deeper. It doesn't try to tell the whole story. It doesn't list every feature. It makes a clear, compelling case for why this is worth your time, and then gets out of the way, right? Most CVs do the opposite. They open with a dense paragraph or generic self-description that nobody reads. Then eventually buried somewhere in the middle page, the experience that would have made someone put the CV in the yes pile. The hiring manager never got there. Flip the structure. Your opening statement should be sharp, specific, written for the role, not copied from a template. Your most impressive and relevant achievements should be visible on page 1 without scrolling, right? The thing that makes you different from the other 139 applicants should not require for someone to go on the hunt for it. If a hiring manager puts your CV down after page 1 and never comes back, page 2 didn't matter. Design page 1 like is the only page that they're going to read, because sometimes it is. Here's an underused differentiator that most candidates never think about: a portfolio. In roles where your work product is demonstrable: communications, research, HR analytics, program design, writing, data visualization, training development. A portfolio is proof in a way that a bullet point never can be. Developed HR analytics dashboard for regional reporting is a claim, right? A screenshot or link to that dashboard becomes the evidence. Most candidates don't include portfolios, which means the candidate what does immediately becomes distinct. It doesn't have to be elaborate. A curated Google Drive folder, a simple PDF compilation, 3 to 5 pieces of relevant work with a sentence explaining the context of each, right? Linked to your CV or your LinkedIn profile, you know? So this happens more than people realize, and hiring managers notice. Applications land in the same system. Sometimes they are reviewed by the same person. Sometimes the same person is on both panels. And when they see your name twice in the same week for 2 different roles, they form an impression. Not always a negative one, right? But it depends entirely on how you have handled it, how you have framed your 2 applications. If your cover letters are distinct, if you've articulated clearly and specifically why you want each role, and your reasons are coherent with your background, applying for 2 roles can actually signal ambition and genuine interest in the organization. If your cover letters are generic, if it's clear you swapped out the job title and submitted the same document twice, it signals something else. If you're not applying strategically, you are volume applying. That's neither application was written with real intent. My guidance, if you're going to apply for 2 roles in the same organization, treat each application as if it's the only one you're submitting. Different cover letter, different emphasis, a clear rationale for why that specific role suits you. Let me bring all this together. Every single mistake I've walked through today is the same root cause. Candidates are thinking about applications from the inside out. They start with themselves, their history, their responsibilities, their preferences, and they document outward. The candidates who succeed do the opposite, and they build towards that. The application process is a communication design problem. Every element of your stack is either building the case for you or eroding it. The length of your CV, the email address at the top, the reference you choose, the achievements you led with, the photo you included or didn't, the hobbies section you left in because the template is one. None of these are neutral. They are all signals and they are all under your control. The job market doesn't require the most qualified candidate. It requires the most legible one. Legible means I made it easy for the decision maker to say yes. I spoke to what they needed. I presented what was relevant, specific, and credible. I didn't make them hunt for the good parts. Legibility is a skill. It's learnable, and it starts with one shift in how you think about what a CV is for. It is not a record of your past. It is a pitch for your future. The hiring manager reading your application is not asking what has the person done. They are asking what can this person do to solve my problem. Answer this question on page 1 in 14 seconds, because in most hiring processes, that's exactly how long you have. I'm Carlo-Marcel Dube. This is People and Platforms. If this episode made you think differently about how you're presenting yourself, share it with someone who's in the job market right now. They need to hear it. Until next time, cheers.